This is a different video from what I normally bring you guys. Today marks the 10-year anniversary of the day that I started Movie Health Community. And to commemorate that, I want to talk about my 10 favorite movies of all time. So let's get to it. Welcome back to Movie Health Community, the internet's #1 source of health warnings at the movies. 10 years is a long time. 10 years ago, I was 25. I was a couple of years into my first marriage. My great-grandfather was still alive. And I had a general sense of optimism about the world that I have been struggling to find again lately. But that's not important. What is important is it's been 10 years since we started doing this. And I just wanted to celebrate in a fun little way. I got some honorable mentions for you about some of my favorite movies of all time. And don't get me wrong, I love every single one of these movies. They just didn't make my top 10 of all time. At some point in my life, some of these have made my top 10 of all time. These honorable mentions in no particular order are Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest, Reservoir Dogs, True Lies, The Prince of Egypt, Terminator 2 Judgment Day, The Phantom of the Opera, which I have a tattoo of right here, Mad Max Fury Road, Blade Runner 2049, Inside Out, Galaxy Quest, Speed, and The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. By the way, these are not evaluations of these movies, but I will leave the corresponding background color to what their flashing lights scores are on the blog side of things of Movie Health Community, so that you know that the green means it's typically safe for a photosensitive person to watch, red means heavy caution, orange and yellow are somewhere in between. With that in mind, at number 10, I've got Top Gun Maverick, which is the most recent movie of these 10 movies to have been released. Honestly, I saw this movie in theaters twice, and I kind of regret not seeing it more times on the big screen. When you watch the original Top Gun, you watch it mostly for the air combat scenes, but me personally, I cannot get into anything that's going on in between the air combat scenes. Top Gun Maverick improves on both of those aspects. The air combat scenes are epic, and everything in between actually gives you something to care about. And the sheer spectacle of how much of this movie is real absolutely merits a place in my top 10 of all time. At number 9, I've got Face Off. The opening action scene to Face Off would serve really well as a finale action scene in a really good action movie. They start off with a really good one, and then they just never let up. This is easily one of the best action movies ever, but what's most impressive about it is that the premise of this movie is so dumb, but the movie that they put together works so well. I don't know how they did it, but they leaned into everything that was ridiculous about this premise and made a nearly perfect action movie. At number 8, I have The Hunchback of Notre Dame. I did want to include at least one animated movie on this list, and it was between this, The Lion King, Aladdin, and Beauty and the Beast. And the edge that The Hunchback of Notre Dame has over all of those is that it has the best music of any Disney movie. Yes, even better than Beauty and the Beast and The Lion King. It feels like the end of the era where family entertainment was still allowed to be really dark and delve into really dark topics. If I ever got the opportunity to play Frollo in a community theater or otherwise paid stage production of The Hunchback of Notre Dame, I gotta tell you, that's one of my dream roles. At number 6, I have The Prestige. Now, Christopher Nolan has made a lot of movies that so many of them come really close to perfection. Some of them may even be considered perfect, but for me, my favorite Christopher Nolan movie is The Prestige. And that has to do with how well it delivers on the promise made on a magic trick at the beginning of the movie, where Michael Caine is highlighting the 3 parts that make a magic trick work, and then the entire movie does all 3 of those parts to bring a really great magic trick of a movie to us. At number 5, I have Alien. This is my favorite horror movie of all time. And although Aliens is really good, Alien actually makes me enjoy horror movies. Typically, I'm not a huge horror movie fan, but Alien is definitely an exception. And a lot of that has to do with how immersive it is in this claustrophobic space of this spaceship as each of the people are being hunted down by this terrifying creature that I can't think of any creatures in any movies that have been as terrifying as the Xenomorph. My first exposure to Alien was actually on the Great Movie Ride at Disney's MGM Studios, where it was always the scariest part of the ride, but that ride did the same thing, just made you feel, even though you're just going through rooms of sets, it still did that same thing of making you feel really immersed in the environment. At number 4, I have Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. The Star Wars movies have always held a special place in my heart. I'll show off another tattoo here. It's the final duel between Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. And this is actually from Return of the Jedi, where Luke briefly embraces the dark side to defeat Darth Vader. But that's just because that's the moment that all of Star Wars builds to, at least the original trilogy. That's the moment it all builds to. But The Empire Strikes Back is something truly special. New Hope introduced us to this fantastical world, but The Empire Strikes Back made it feel like a world that was lived in, a world that had its own cultures. And what John Williams did with this movie, making it so atmospheric with some of his iconic scores. Every time I watch The Empire Strikes Back, it feels like there's true magic happening. And that's not going to be the last time on this countdown that I talk about the feeling of true magic happening. I did get to see this one once with a live orchestra, and it was absolutely a spiritual experience. I only cried like twice. At number 3, I have Who Framed Roger Rabbit. When a lot of people think about their Robert Zemeckis movies, most people default to Forrest Gump or Back to the Future, but not me. I go directly to Who Framed Roger Rabbit. As a kid, I loved everything involving the Toon characters and their integration into the real world. But I didn't realize just how much work and how much skill had to go into making them interact with the real world. And so as I've grown up and realized how much magic is actually on display with this movie, it's humbling. It may be a little bit more impressive than the constant magic that is on display in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. That's why I relegated the Fellowship of the Ring to an honorable mention and not counting it in my top 10. I wanted to have some good variety on this countdown. Who Framed Roger Rabbit is a great example of a family movie where, yes, it's made with an audience of children in mind, but there is so much going on that the adults can appreciate as well. At number 2, I have The Green Mile. The term emotional roller coaster always comes to mind when I think about The Green Mile. And it's because this movie is hysterically funny at some parts, but very, very dark at other parts. And the journey through these extremes of emotion is so smooth, like an Intamin roller coaster, not like a rickety old wooden coaster. Watching Paul Edgecombe grow and evolve as a character, while at the same time watching Percy Wetmore devolve into what, in all honesty, is probably inevitably going to happen to him in the future, is such a satisfying journey. And even though we have to explore some really dark topics to get there, it is a journey I look forward to every time I put on this movie. It is the case for if a movie needs to be 3 hours, that's okay. Finally, at number 1, and I have held this in my heart as the greatest movie of all time for multiple decades at this point, so I think it's safe to say it's not going anywhere. It's Raiders of the Lost Ark. Here's a picture of my tattoo from Raiders of the Lost Ark. Just like with Alien, my love for Indiana Jones starts at Disney's MGM Studios with the Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular, which I did watch as like a 3-year-old and was completely entranced by it. My parents could tell you plenty of stories about how that influenced my childhood. I remember one time as a child, we were watching Raiders of the Lost Ark as a family, and it got to the ending with the really graphic supernatural villain defeats. And my mom actually tried to cover my eyes, and I just had to look up at her and say, Mom, I've seen this. But everything about this movie is perfect. The pacing is great, even between all of the top tier action sequences. Everything is so gripping, and a lot of credit does have to go to John Williams, but there's a good amount of credit to go to the production team behind this to make you really feel like you're in these foreign lands and digging up their treasures. Anytime I go more than 2 or 3 months without watching Raiders of the Lost Ark, it feels like too long. The most recent time I saw it was at the Tampa Theater, which does special screenings of old movies just for the fans. And I think this movie was also very central in shaping my love for over-the-top action movies. A love that you can probably see evident in a lot of the picks I have, both in my top 10 and my honorable mentions earlier. So that is my top 10 movies of all time, my top 10 favorites. That involves a lot of consideration and years of experience. I've seen all of these movies many, many times. There are other movies I've seen fewer times that if I give them more watches would probably also make this list in one way or another. But I am looking forward to continuing to bring you guys content about the movies. I love the movies, and I love talking about the movies. And I'm so thankful to everybody on Patreon who is actually paying me to talk about the movies and let you guys know how safe each movie is for your various health issues that could be set off by a movie. Thank you so much to everybody who follows us on Tumblr and Facebook. And as always, stay safe at the movies.